This is insane. Marathon's entire art style and various assets may have been stolen. We have a Twitter user here named N2, and they have shared a ton of evidence. They brought the receipts to call Bungie out on. We have a Twitter user here named N2, and they have shared a ton of evidence. They brought the receipts to call Bungie out on their lifting of their different posters. Here we go. The Marathon Alpha released recently, and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. Now that is a bold claim. Obviously, you got to bring some receipts to prove this. So what have they shared with us? This is their original image, and they actually have the Twitter URL here so that we can go back and see that it's properly dated. And so we clicked on it, and you can see here it's got like cryptic numbers with it, 170715, and it dates back to July 15th, 2017. So it adds up. All right, so this is their image on their profile that predates Marathon's conception, because Marathon, we know, has been developed for around, it depends on which dev you ask, but around like 4 to 6 years, somewhere around there. I think it may have just been like an idea or an incubation project for a bit, but it's around 4 to 6 years Marathon was developed. So the latest it would go back to would be maybe 2019. And this is what we have here. This is an image that they made, a poster. It says Aleph, and then it has a line going across it. And then on top of that, it says like dark space, something logistics, right? Heritage logistics, all right? And you can see inside the Marathon Alpha, when you look at various different buildings, this is one of the like rockets that drop stuff here. All right, you can see the exact graphic, one for one, the exact lining up, the font style, everything is exactly as they made it, copy and pasted from their poster inside Marathon. So completely lifted. There's no denying that this happened at this point. The second part, you can see it again on the outside of this building, same thing. And the third one as well. So it's all over in Marathon. This particular image definitely lifted. This art style was definitely taken from them and used to create Marathon to some degree. All right, and they obviously were not credited. They were not paid for this. So it's obviously a bit frustrating for them. And so what do they want from this? Let's look into this a little bit deeper. Well, actually, let's look at the other image we have here before we get into that. This is the second piece of evidence that they share with us. This is their original post. And again, they have the Twitter URL here. So that way, if you want to, you can verify the exact date of it, go back. It's got like 2 chevrons on it and then a couple little symbols behind it, some rectangles behind it. You can see those images being used to some degree. I mean, if I'm being honest, this one's not as convincing as the others because, you know, 2 chevrons next to each other, you know, we could be saying this is stealing from hunters in Destiny at this point, right? So it's not as convincing as the last one, I'd say. But this piece down here has a rectangle with some text in it, 3 lines of text, and the number 28 next to it. That is a 1-for-1 exactly what's happening over here. So definitely something going on between that one, or the number 28, the rectangle, and then the exact same. There's 3 words written in here, and you can see they're written here as well. So that definitely happened. And then we also have these two in combination here, where you have like these little like warning signs. They're squares with little symbols in them, and you can see it has a very, very similar art style to what is in Marathon. So definitely some assets lifted. Definitely they took from this artist in terms of, you know, not just inspiration. So what do they want? They go on to say, Bungie is of course not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I have refined for the last decade. So they've been working on this art style for so long now. Look at some of these images they have. These are incredible, right? You can see this. This looks like something in Marathon, right? Potentially because they took this and put it into Marathon, right? To some degree. So this looks exactly like Marathon and Marathon's art style and the different ARG puzzles that we're trying to solve and things of that nature, okay? Now, there's obviously going to be some similarities from one art style to another, though. So you can't necessarily knock on something for taking inspiration. But they've kind of refined this entire genre. Like, they are the person of this genre. They are one of the most prolific artists of this, from what it would seem. But clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. Now that hurts. You have to pay them, especially if you're lifting assets, and attribution would at least be nice that you took inspiration from this artist to create this art style in your game, because I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point, okay? Not only that, we do have them tagging Bungie themselves, and they actually do tag Joseph Cross, who is the franchise art director for Marathon. And when you actually look at their profile, you'll notice that when you look at followers and followers, you know that Joseph Cross does in fact follow them. So they know about this art style, they know about this artist, and so do various other.
You may want to see this before Tuesday.
This was shot in front of a live studio audience at twitch.tv/Sweatsicle.
Oh boy, this is getting a lot of traction, isn't it? This is literally tweeted like less than 3 hours ago. It's already got 5,000 likes. Oh boy, dude. The Marathon Alpha released recently, and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. Wait, does it actually say the same thing word for word? Aleph, Dark Space, Haulage Logistics? Bro. Hey, Carter, happy birthday, bro. What's up, dude? Did you want to do some gaming? Does he link when he posted in 2017? I want to see his original poster design, like, time-stamped. Up to you? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna look over this drama and then I'll boot up the game. Does this sound good? See, like, it literally is a straight rip if this is his poster design. But, like, why would they... Okay, so obviously, like, when you look at, like, you can't copyright a triangle, like, but there's other elements of it here. So you have, like, you have this symbol is here, this symbol is here, this symbol is one of these, maybe not. This one is the same, this one is the same, this one is the same. I'm just not sure about these two. I guess maybe they're from here. Literally my logo. Bungie is, of course, not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I've refined for the last decade, but clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. So this is his on the left. And that's theirs. This is from the Marathon homepage, and this one's from the Marathon press kit. I mean... Dude. this isn't the first time Bungie has stolen art from somebody. So I mean, I'd believe it. Cause what was it? It was like, wasn't there like an Ace of Spades something that they stole from somebody? Am I thinking of that correctly? Was it an in-game skin, Ace of Spades? Or was it it was the Nerf gun? Yeah, that's right. It was the Ace of Spades Nerf gun that they stole from somebody, and then the community blasted them for it, and they're like, oops, sorry, here's credit and here's damages. This is what happens when a company gets too corporate, man. They literally think they can just get away with anything. I don't have the resources nor the energy to spare to pursue this legally, but I've lost count of the number of times a major company has deemed it easier to pay a designer to imitate or steal my work rather than to write me an email. For 10 years, I've never made a consistent income from this work, and I'm tired of designers from huge companies mood boarding and parasiting my designs while I struggle to make a living. That's actually so sad, dude. And, like, I 100% agree. Like, I low-key, like, I mean, if I were him, I would be suing. I would at least consult a lawyer first to be like, okay, are these actually similar enough to sue? In my opinion, in my armchair expert opinion, I would say yes, but, like, obviously I'm not a lawyer, so I couldn't tell you. Chat, what do you think? Would you guys sue? Because I guarantee you, if he put out, like, a GoFundMe, I can almost guarantee that people would fund it. It's just disgusting, man. It really is. It's like, Bungie has so many designers, and it's like, I wonder if it was a legitimate, like, the hard part is knowing whether it's like a lower level position that decided to copy and just kind of risk their job, or if it was like a higher level art executive that was like, okay, go imitate this art because we like this. That's the hard part that we don't know. Not that it makes a difference, but, like, especially with how similar this is. Like, they could have taken this and, like, changed up the symbols at least a little bit. This is literally like copying straight from your friend's homework, dude. This is disgusting. Regardless of how much he'd make off of it, it would be more than what he'd spend on it. I disagree. Like, is hiring a lawyer expensive? But, like, if you win a case like this, oftentimes you can pursue, like, to recoup those legal fees through your winnings as well. I don't know, man. If this is the case, like, they actually did rip from this guy, I don't know this person or their art, like, I would be balls deep in my lawyer's DMs, ready to go to work. Because the ironic part is how much Bungie preaches about, like, how much we love our artists and, like, playing fair game and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, showing art appreciation, like the artist of the week that they do in the TWID. You know, it's like, how can you sit here and preach all these positive things and then be doing this behind closed doors? It's disgusting, and they need to be called out for it. Like this, bro, you can't let corporate conglomerates keep getting away with this. It's disgusting. Comic, we could probably upload that segment if you're here. It's a complete copy and paste. I thought maybe it was just like an inspiration when I saw the tweet, but after looking at it, like, bro, how are you gonna sit and defend that? You just can't. It's actually this. You can't make this up. Look at this. Look at this tweet. Look at this. Tweeted this September 27th, 2017. How did you find this? Apparently people haven't seen this yet. I scrolled down in the media tab. Yikes, bro. Big yikes. This is the second one. July 15th, 2017. Literally, yeah, bro. Wow. Wow. I'm actually speechless, bro. I'm speechless. I've been following this guy since 2016. Oh, so you know who this person is? Wow. I literally don't know what to say. I hope this person pursues legal charges. I really do. Cause like, again, if they don't, they're just gonna keep doing it. They need to be ripped a new one in order to stop. That's the only way it's gonna stop. Cause it's happened once, it happened again, and it's gonna keep happening. Pretty sure Joseph Cross follows him. I don't know if I follow Joseph Cross. Wow. Absolutely disgusting behavior from Bungie. YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the live channel for more content. And, yeah. Okay, goodbye. Alright, YouTube, we are checking out another Aegis Speedrun World Record, the King's Fall D2 variant, 11 minutes and 44 seconds. Again, could not find his team name in the description, so we'll just have to see as we go here.
This was shot in front of a live studio audience at twitch.tv/Sweatsicle.
It looks like the same team as Crota. Except they subbed in Chaos. I think.
Go.
I think everybody else is the same. Oh, dude. Okay, so they're doing the D1 method.
Sword.
So, in D1, this is a thing. I don't know if they still do this in like the current record. It was faster to go through the back side than it was the front side to slam here because of that wall in the middle. Obviously, having Eager Edge in Destiny 2 will help launch people a lot easier.
So with the Marathon Alpha being over, I ran out of content. So Bungie just announced some new expansions coming out. We got the Edge of Fate coming out.
Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I just wanted to make a little from the internet. And hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I just wanted to make a little
If everything goes according to plan, the next new nuclear power plant in the United States will not operate with water, as most of them do. Instead, it will operate with liquid, molten sodium metal. This is TerraPower and their Natrium Power Plant project. Here's how it works. TerraPower is a self-proclaimed nuclear innovation company. Founded by Bill Gates in 2006 and partially funded by the Department of Energy, TerraPower is one of the few private nuclear development and design companies that is making real progress on both of those fronts. I was invited to tour TerraPower in the February of 2025. Fronts, development and design companies that is making real progress on both of those fronts. I was invited to tour TerraPower in the February of 2025. In part 1 of this sponsored series, you saw the science behind turning nuclear waste into cancer medication. Here in part 2, we will talk to the scientists, engineers, and other professionals who are bringing online a Natrium nuclear reactor, and it's poised to be America's first next-generation reactor. But first, what does next generation mean for nuclear reactors? Like any commercialized technology, nuclear reactor designs have varied a lot over the last 7 decades. Most are pressurized, some are not. Most are slow, some are fast. We will define those terms later, but what you need to know now is that no matter the reactor design, you can categorize them by how they perform generally. Safety, efficiency, cost, and that's how you put them into different generations. The first generation of nuclear reactors were prototypes, inefficient. By generation 2, we had figured them out enough to deploy safe, reliable designs all over the world and operate them for decades. Generation 3 reactors got even better, even safer, standardized, and modularized. Currently, we're in the Generation 3+ era. Nuclear has gotten even more economical, but it still relies on basic physics and designs from the 40s and 50s. Generation 4, if we ever get there in a significant commercialized way, is the true power of the atom. The reactors outcompete just about everything. They use even safer fuel and produce even less nuclear waste. This is where TerraPower comes in. What TerraPower wants to build is a so-called sodium-cooled fast reactor. It's a nuclear reactor that still uses spicy uranium rocks to make steam, but the processes and materials are different. What makes it fast is the fact that it doesn't use slow neutrons that are slowed down by a moderator. Instead, it uses enriched fuel without a moderator to sustain the chain reactions. Most importantly, the reactor will use liquid sodium metal as the coolant, which will in turn heat up molten salt, which will heat up water. But how can hot liquid metal be a good coolant? Conductivity.
It's sodium to salt to water. So the sodium is the working fluid of the primary system. Salt.
Metal be a good salt, would be a metal as the coolant. Most importantly, the reactor will use liquid sodium metal as the coolant, which will in turn heat up molten salt, which will heat up water. But how can hot heat up will use liquid sodium metal as the coolant? Use liquid sodium metal as the coolant, which will in turn heat up molten salt, which will heat up water. But how, which will in turn, the reactor will use liquid sodium metal as the coolant, which will in turn heat up molten salt, which will heat up water. But how can hot liquid metal be a good coolant? Conductivity.
It's sodium to salt to water. So the sodium is the working fluid of the primary system. So that's the fluid that's coming into contact with the nuclear core, and it's where, so the sodium is the working fluid of the primary system. So that's the fluid that's coming into contact with the nuclear core, and it's great because it's an excellent heat transfer medium because of being liquid metal. And then it delivers that heat to a salt system, which is a much better fluid for storing energy.
So unlike a company like Copenhagen Atomics that wants to combine fuel and salt together in a so-called molten salt reactor, TerraPower is separating fuel and
storing energy.
So unlike a company like Copenhagen Atomics that wants to combine fuel and salt together in a so-called molten salt reactor, TerraPower is separating them so that it can take advantage of sodium and salt's many useful properties. For one, sodium flows surprisingly well. For two, it conducts heat super efficiently. Just look at how this sample of metal can go all the way from molten back to solid in under 2 minutes. That's because the heat is flowing out of it just that fast. And because sodium is a metal, you can pump it around a reactor with magnetism. There is nothing physical in the beaker right now that is spinning that sodium. That's just magnetism, baby. Then there's the salt. TerraPower wants to employ a formula that's been used for years in the solar power industry, so its properties are already well known. In fact, some of the salt that you see here is a flavor enhancer in Slim Jims. TerraPower tells me that at working temperature, the salt transfers heat and flows just like water, which mitigates pumping problems. Maybe most consequentially for Natrium, however, is the fact that salt holds onto heat like water does, and it's denser, so that you can hold even more heat than the same amount of water could. The numbers all work out, such that TerraPower's reactor is also a thermal battery.
So you're actually using the salt tanks and you're operating your reactor at 100%. What you're doing is raising the level of salt so that there's more mass that you have to heat, and so you're keeping that heat in your salt tank and not putting it on the grid. So your salt tanks are what is modulating, and you can load follow with your salt tanks, and your nuclear reactor just stays at 100%
like a heat
power.
battery, like you said.
Exactly.
The heat battery part of Natrium's design is one of the keys to making it work at scale. By adding or subtracting salt laden with heat energy to the plant's energy island, their reactor can both run at 100% all the time to provide baseload power and follow what the grid is actually demanding at that time, just like solar and wind can do.
LWRs right now, not great at load following because a nuclear reactor is a diesel engine. It just wants to run at 100% power. That's the way you efficiently use fuel, is 100% power 100% of the time. The grid doesn't always need that. The grid, as far as the need for electricity, ups and downs depending on what sort of industry is coming online, people turning on lights, refrigerators, all of those type of things. And so load following, as much as nuclear power is a great base load, it can be 100% all the time, it doesn't like to come up and down to load follow. With Natrium, now we have that capability.
All of this is a smack your own forehead kind of design that seems to tick all the right boxes, if TerraPower can make this Natrium work. By the way, what is Natrium?
Where does the word natrium come from then?
So natrium is the Latin word for sodium.
Oh.
Because think of the periodic
Asked and answered.
think of the periodic table.
Yep.
Sodium as an element, its sign is Na, and everybody's like, "What? It's sodium? What the heck? Why?" And it's natrium. That's where that comes from. Oh my gosh, mind blown.
So, just to recap, TerraPower's Natrium reactor is a Generation 4 reactor that uses its namesake, liquid sodium, as a coolant to more efficiently transfer nuclear heat to liquid salt, an already proven technology which allows the fully powered up reactor to adjust the amount of hot salt it creates to provide baseload and chaseload power by boiling water and turning turbines to make electricity. I'm fine. The physics behind all of this have been around since we first split the atom, yet this apparently amazing technology never got off the ground. So, why is TerraPower special? Well, because they've gotten further than anyone else. A lot further.
Within 5 or 6 years, TerraPower's Natrium reactor will be making electricity in Wyoming. TerraPower's
a lot further.
Within 5 or 6 years, TerraPower's Natrium reactor will be making electricity in Wyoming. So that's the country's next reactor. There's a lot of news about nuclear now, a lot of good, exciting news about nuclear energy. We haven't had many new reactors in the last few decades.
So this will be the first new reactor in the United States in a long time.
Yeah, this is America's next reactor. It's the only reactor that's under review for a construction permit with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
We're planning on having the Kenmare Power Station on Things and doing the tests with our lab, with national labs and other partnerships to really prove out our technology.
We can say we're pretty close to commercialization now. We are getting a commercial license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's not a prototype, it's not a test reactor. It's a 40-year commercial license to put this plant in Wyoming. So
there's a lot that's going into, hey, what has been done before? Because sodium fast reactors have existed. They existed at the FFTF in Washington. And so they've existed, they've run before, but not at a commercial scale. But that's really great technology that we can feed from. We can get that information for all of our computer models and things like that with our reactor core, so that in the end, we're using data from the 60s that when they operated sodium fast reactors, putting a 2024 spin on it as far as, hey, we want to do this bigger, more effective, more efficient, and then go from there with the NRC to say, hey, we're using this modeling from FFTF, we're putting that into our models now, and then we're adding this salt component so that, hey, we can load follow with a nuclear reactor.
So they never quite saw their day. They were put on the side, but a lot of great work was done in the US, and it got close to being ready to commercialize, but it just stopped. And so it's this like latent technology there waiting to be harnessed.
What has surely helped the process of making America's next nuclear reactor along is the fact that, you guessed it, Natrium has even more theoretical design advantages. Sodium-cooled fast reactors are safer, and that safety lowers cost.
Having spent the last 10 years on this technology myself, it's one of the things I've come to appreciate the most is that it's an atmospheric pressure system. And being at atmospheric pressure takes away a large amount of stored energy that you put into a nuclear system in a light water reactor is in the form of pressure in order to keep the fluid a liquid, but also be at high temperature. You know, sodium boils at about 890 degrees Celsius, and we operate the reactor down around 500 degrees Celsius. So there's no need to pressurize it to keep it a liquid. It's hundreds of degrees below boiling, and therefore you don't have to protect against leaks as much. You can design the structures much more economically. The safety performance actually allows you to reduce the footprint that you need for the nuclear side of the plant. So if we can take everything we need for safety and pretty much put it inside the reactor vessel and store that below grade, then we've essentially reduced the nuclear footprint at just that.
All of this comes together when you realize what TerraPower and others actually mean when they say nuclear side and energy side of a plant. In a typical nuclear power plant, everything is basically on the same pad of concrete. The fuel, the reactor, the waste, the turbines. However, what the thermal batteries of molten salt allow you to do is decouple these systems into what TerraPower calls the nuclear island and the energy island. If power was interrupted in a typical plant, it would directly affect power going to the grid. But since energy in this Natrium design is stored in the salt, it's not going directly to the water or the grid. There's a buffer. This buffer is so good, in fact, that the Natrium reactor could totally shut down, fully scram like in an emergency, and the energy island would still run at 100% power to the grid. I got to simulate this on a fancy engineering simulator.
So this is our most advanced modeling work. We integrate all the design inputs so we can run an overall plant operation on this tool. As you know, this is the first of kind design. We need something we call digital sandbox. So engineers, designers, they can play around things, put things together and break things and to see how it goes.
Right here is the power output at the nuclear island. See it dropping dramatically after I hit the scram button. This is the energy output at the same time at the energy island. Solid as a rock. Of salt. Of liquid, you get it.